Hey, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Cameron.
Say again?
Sorry, my name is Cameron.
Cameron, go ahead.
Nice to meet you.
You too.
Before I started my question, I guess I kind of wanted to ask another question, just to like ensure I'm not putting words in your mouth or something. Do you believe that suffering is a direct consequence of humans having free will?
Well, it started with Satan, actually.
If God is all-loving and all-powerful, why would he create people who will only experience suffering? This is one of the most emotionally charged and philosophically difficult questions in Christian apologetics. In this Q&A session at Louisiana State University, Cameron asked Frank Turek, if God created people out of love, why would he create those who suffer terribly their whole lives? Cameron shares personal experiences of family members born with debilitating conditions, questioning whether a loving God would intentionally create individuals who only experience pain. His question highlights the problem of evil, one of the most common objections to Christianity.
But yeah, suffering has been introduced through free choice.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so you said something that I guess I found interesting with the first gentleman who asked the question. You said that God did not have to create us, but he chose to out of love, right? So I guess, to me, I'm thinking, obviously, there's the argument from like, oh, he creates people that he knows later on are going to sin or do things. But that's not my problem. My problem is, I have a lot of, cousins, who are born with things like Duke syndrome, with, all these disabilities that were debilitating, that pretty much, like some of them were basically rendered like vegetables, right? Who knew nothing but pain and, things like that. And I'm like, if he created them out of love, I don't see where the love is in creating beings, creating circumstances where living beings only exist to suffer.
Okay. We don't always know why God does certain things, but let me give you an illustration from my grandmother, who the last 4 or 5 years of her life, she was basically bedridden. And the youngest of her 5 kids, my aunt, wasn't really very mature. But she took care of her mom every day for 4 years. And it helped grow her into a mature adult. We don't always see how suffering can bring forth good, but sometimes it can. And just because we can't see sometimes how suffering can bring forth good doesn't mean it won't. Have you ever heard of the ripple effect?
Yes.
Okay, so the ripple effect says that every event that occurs ripples forward to affect billions, maybe even trillions of other events. And for us to say that this particular event I see no good in makes no sense, because we know virtually nothing of the past, very little of the present, we know nothing of the future. And for us to say that this event can't bring forth good in the future is not a wise conclusion, because we don't have enough information.
Yeah.
So God may allow suffering to bring forth a greater good, and the scriptures talk about this in many places, even when we can't see how that greater good is coming forth.
You debated Alex O'Connor I don't remember exactly when. There was a point, I guess, I don't think he brought up with you, although I could be misremembering. There was something he said about how, it's not necessarily just humans like that, right? Obviously, humans can get brought closer to God. But he made references to things like, a branch falling on a deer and just, leaving it crippled, helpless, nothing to do. And I don't think that deer is going to benefit from that in any way. A lot of nature, I guess, is very cruel. I mean, you believe in evolution, correct? Just that it was God kind of orchestrating it?
No.
You don't believe in evolution?
I believe in microevolution. I think there's evidence against macroevolution.
Okay. But you still believe that it's like a kill-or-be-killed world, right? Like, obviously, if a creature dies, it does not procreate. It does not go on to go again, right? So I look at a world like that, and I'm thinking, if you were to take me outside of this universe, right, and you were to tell me, I'm going to place you into a universe that was designed by an all-powerful, all-loving, and God, right, who could do anything and who knew everything, I would think, okay, this is going to be a paradise, right? Things are not going to get killed senselessly. Things are going to be prosperous. And then I get here, and you drop me in the middle of a forest. Let's say, I random chance on what species I am, right? I get dropped off, as a chicken in a factory farm, and that's not a great place to be, in a place that was designed by an all-powerful, all-loving God. I get dropped off, as a deer, running away from a gazelle.
Hang on a sec, Cameron. I see where you're going here, but the Bible does not say that this world is going to be without pain and suffering. In fact, almost every book of the New Testament talks about pain and suffering. It's not promising a painless world until we get to the other side. So if you're going to say that this world can't exist, the one we experience now, that's exactly the world the Bible says does exist. But there's a way out of it, and Jesus provides the way out.
I guess, why is the world here necessary then? If everyone's going to end up in heaven or hell regardless, I don't know why the kind of middleman, earth, universe thing is...
Because it gives us an ability to make a free choice, to decide whether or not we're going to follow God or not. Adam and Eve had a choice, and they decided to rebel against God, and they're our federal head. So we're in a situation where we are now in a fallen world, in a fallen state, and we're given a choice to either follow God or not. And it's up to us whether we do that, because God is not going to force himself on us.
So regarding, let's say, an infant, right, that was born and has a terrible condition, and, like, I have my cousin Connor. He lived to be about a day old, but, his heart just gave out. It was terrible. It was traumatic. Do you believe that he went to heaven?
Well, I do, because I think that's what the Old Testament teaches with regard to David's son. David said, I will go to him, he won't come to me. But whatever God does, he's going to be just, because he's the standard of justice. Okay, but we can't keep going on. We got a line here, but let me just say this, Cameron. These are all good questions, but they all presuppose a standard that only exists objectively if God exists. And what you can say, and what Matt could say earlier, is that I believe in God, I just don't think the God of the Bible is the true God. That's a fair position to take. The problem is, then you have to deal with the evidence that Jesus died and rose from the dead, and I think there's very good evidence that Jesus did die and rise from the dead, and therefore then the Christian God is the true God. As I said earlier, a bunch of free will creatures, billions of them running around, is going to create a messy world. And so things aren't going to always go the way we want them to go. But God has promised that those who follow him will one day have all this evil work together for good. So that's the promise that we have.
Okay.
And he himself submitted himself to this fallen world full of pain and suffering for our own benefit.
Okay.
All right?
Well, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Cameron. Thank you so much. Hey, God bless you. Thank you. Hey, what's your...
Cameron's question strikes at the heart of one of Christianity's most difficult challenges, the problem of suffering. If God is all-loving, why would he create individuals who seem to know nothing but pain? This question is not just theoretical. It is deeply personal for many who have witnessed suffering firsthand. Frank Turek's response highlights two key aspects: the ripple effect and free will. The ripple effect suggests that suffering can lead to unforeseen good, often shaping character, deepening relationships, or inspiring change. The story of Joseph in Genesis 50:20 supports this. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Similarly, free will means we live in a world where actions, good and bad, have consequences. However, Cameron's concern goes deeper. What about infants or individuals who seem to only experience suffering? While we may not have full answers, Christianity teaches that God is just and merciful, ensuring that those who suffer are not abandoned. Many theologians argue that children who pass away are welcomed into God's presence. 2 Samuel 12:23. For further exploration, consider these books: The Problem of Pain, C.S. Lewis, A Philosophical and Pastoral Approach to Suffering. Why Does God Allow Evil? Clay Jones addresses why suffering exists in a world governed by a good God. If God, Why Evil? Norman Geisler, A Logical Breakdown of the Problem of Evil. Is God a Moral Monster? Paul Copon defends the biblical God against accusations of injustice. Pain and suffering challenge our faith, but Christianity offers hope, redemption, and ultimate restoration. God does not waste suffering. He redeems it.